Twitch agrees. Looks like it does. Great. We're running about 15 minutes late here in the stream, but I'm running more like an hour late in person. I left work early to get home in time to stream, and the bus didn't come, so I waited 35 minutes for a bus that comes every 20 minutes. Whew. And it's 90 degrees out, so I'm not in a very good mood. But we'll see what we can get done. Erdroy is already here, and I haven't even told the world that I'm streaming yet. My annoyed streaming. I'm streaming, probably focusing on 3D modeling. Paste, indie dev. That's not how you spell indie dev. I guess I should go over and post that here as well. All right, so I've been working on what these ships need to look like. Now, the strength of this system, the strength of this piece of software that I'm running this game, is its high physics reliability. It can do a lot of physics stuff that can't normally be done. And that means that moving parts are the real strength of the game. So I am going to focus on ships that have moving parts. If you've been paying attention to Twitter, you may have noticed that I had a list of about 100 different kinds of moving parts. And we're going to be making sure that our ships feel right when they, change and move. I think the defining characteristic of this particular project is going to be that its ships feel mobile and living. So that's going to be a little bit fun. This is what I got done last night, just to block out some of the basics. Because this system has structural supports, there are going to be things which can go inside of structural supports rather than outside or as structural supports. And as a simple example, we've got these frames here, and you can put stuff inside them, like, say, a cargo bay. Now, that's not a very good cargo bay. I just threw it together in about 4 seconds. But I want everything to feel like it has some kind of functionality in terms of moving or potentially moving. And I think that the cargo bay is no exception. So what I would like for the cargo bay is for it to have rails or some kind of thing where individual pieces of cargo or cargo slots might be extended up, or alternately the whole thing might come out on a rail so that it can be tugged away. Either way, it's pretty clear that we're going to need a framework for cargo bay slots rather than just a cargo bay. So we're going to delete this guy, and we're going to put our framework here in the middle. And won't that be fun? Today I'm planning on focusing mostly on 3D modeling because I'm extremely annoyed and hot and dehydrated. And coding, while you're in a bad mental space, is not a great idea. You will definitely break things. All right. So if we're going to do rails, we're going to have a vertical slide-in system. So we'll create a cube here. And I think that the 2 meter by 2 meter cube is good, but there are lots and lots of mirroring things we can do. So let's go ahead and take advantage of this situation by mirroring, come on, most of the object. Mirror. All right, there we go. So with the mirroring on, we can just mirror out on all 3 axes, and this makes it fairly easy for us to create a frame. So what we'll do is we'll extend this forward, and that'll completely fill the frame, and that'll create a 4 meter long set of repeating object. So the standard size, if we do this, will be 2 meter by 2 meter by 4 meter, which is not a bad size for our objects. And in truth, it's more than 4 meters. It's got a little bit of width. More than 2 meters wide, it's got a little bit of width that we can use that we're not using at the moment. I don't think I'll be using them for this, though. So what we're going to do is delete that vert, and then we're going to take the face we've got here and just extrude it inwards by dragging, like so. I forgot to turn on clipping because I am a big dope. There we go. Now there are some faces here that we don't need because I forgot to turn on clipping. So we're going to go ahead and delete all of the faces that we don't need. Why can't I select that? Of course not. There we are. All right, there we are. So now that should be a full set of elements, but I believe that it's inside out. So we'll flip it. There we are. That's more like it. So what do we want to do to make this frame feel like a frame? Well, first off, we want it to line up properly here. So we're going to make this a little bit thicker. But what we can do is we can add in some detailing or something so that it looks a little bit nicer there in the long run. For now, what we're going to do is we're just going to punch out one of these, and then we're going to turn off the mirror modifier for this guy, I guess, and then shrink it down. And we'll extrude out like so. We aren't going to need that face, so get rid of it. We also aren't going to need that face, so get rid of it. And that is going to be a rail. Now we want to have a little bit of detail on our rail so that it feels complex and organic, but we don't want to waste too much in the way of verts. We don't want to waste too much processing power. So we're just going to do something gentle like this. And then we can adjust exactly how fast that diminishes by dragging. And then what we can do is add in an array modifier and tell it to do a constant offset on the y-axis of however wide we want these arrays to be. And 0.25 is the right amount for us. That might be a little tight. How about 0.5? That's more like it. Okay. And then we can just increase the number and move it until it looks right. Now the problem is that we are not centered. I stupidly did not put us at a squared off point. So when it comes to trying to make this fit, we are a little bit just kind of eyeballing it. But what we'll do is we'll try and set it up so that that center piece there is exactly in the middle. And that should be close enough for our needs. To be honest, we're going to be mirroring it across the y-axis, so it should be okay. Let's go ahead and paste these things together. And you can see, oops, my bad, apply it and then paste them together. And you can see that it... The fuck is going on here? Apply it? Did I apply the mirror? No, I don't know what the heck's going on. I did apply the mirror, didn't I? God damn it. Come on. Did you join in? No, you didn't. Why didn't... What the hell's going on? Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. Okay, now is your mirror modifier intact? Your mirror modifier is actually intact. Okay, good. Jesus. Missing the bus, or not even missing it, it's just not showing up. And then the next bus being 15 minutes late really did a number on my patience. Sorry, guys. Or guy. So just increase that to 7 and drag it down to here. Close enough. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to apply the array modifier, and then we're going to join it here. Oh, look, just like I've done it a million times before. This time it worked. All right, good. So we're going to go ahead and delete these guys. Don't need them. And we're going to delete half of this guy. Oh, it looks like there's no clean half cut. Oh, that's fine. We can create a clean half cut. There we are. And then we'll just delete the left half here. And there we go. We're obviously going to want to make sure that this is neatly settled into the halfway line. There we are, that'll work. And that's plenty good for our needs. Of course, you can see over here that we have an awkward amount of space. Our options are we can either change the width of these or we can change what's over here on this corner. And I think that makes a lot more sense, so that's what we're going to do. So this is a nice thick bounding box or border area. And what we want to do is we want to make it feel like this part here has a purpose. So we're going to carve out some stuff. Start with a bevel. And then what we're going to want to do is bevel in. And then bring this and this back and down. And shrink it a little. There we are. And then we can take these guys and bevel them. That's not a very good bevel though, is it? Okay, so bevel. That's a little bit better. Maybe not. Okay. How about if we just bevel these two? Yeah, that's probably okay. Faustian Hero says, hey, I'm currently watching your LAS videos. Wanted to drop in and say he appreciates the analysis. I really enjoyed making the LAS videos. There are a lot of missteps in the game, but by and large, I think it's a really great example of how you can do that kind of game, you know, playably well. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. I know there are some new Life is Strange games that will eventually come out someday, and I'll probably do analyses of those if they are, you know, decent enough to play. If they turn out to be boring or crappy, I won't. So let's go ahead and add in some detail here. And what we're going to do is extrude back and then flip the UVs. And then we're going to want to make this into a more circular situation so that we get a feel that it's like something that can spin or rotate to accomplish something. Because as I said, mobility is going to be the movement of pieces on the spaceship is what I'm going to focus on. There we are. Something like that. It doesn't really matter what it is at the moment. We're just kind of mocking it up. But that's going to be our crate. Let's go ahead and do a Smart UV project. And then we'll add in some materials like hull and heavy hull. We can go ahead and tell it what kind of heavy hull elements we're using, which includes these guys, and this wall, and this wall. Huh, I didn't realize it was split. I guess it is. Okay. There we are. Now this wall doesn't have any mounts or anything on it. It's a little bit generic, and it's hard to see when it's inside of the frame. But if we were to drag it out, you can see how it's a perfect box on the outside. Let's go ahead and break that up. It's a little bit too perfectly boxy. So what we'll do is we'll give it a little bit of fat here on the edges. And then here on the back, we're going to want to give it some kind of interesting mounting system. So, as always, I will rely on the bevels for that. There, good enough. And we're going to want to make this, these are all, at the moment, heavy hull. we're going to want to go ahead and make some of this stuff light hole so it stands out. Like so. We're also going to want to make this whole thing smooth and then turn on the auto normals. And we're probably going to want to blend this edge. It's a little bit heavy. There we are. So there we have it. That is our cargo frame, which can be applied directly or it can be put inside of a structural frame. Either way, we want to put cargo inside of it, with the idea being that the cargo will either be a number of small pallets or a single large pallet. Go ahead and name this the cargo rack. And then what we'll do is we will create both of those things. We'll start with a single large pack. Boom. And then this is going to be not quite as large as the rest of it, but we still have to split and all that jazz because this is going to be mirrored on all axes. So because of that, we can just quickly go over here and delete and oh, too much. Delete and delete. And then tell it to mirror. Oh, no, that's not right. X, Y, Z and clip. Perfect. Now we can adjust these things without having to worry about the mirroring screwing up. Hooray. So what we're going to do is just manually eyeball things. It doesn't really take too much effort. It doesn't have to be perfect, but something like that is about right. And then what we're going to want to do is model in some rails. Like that. And that will be the thing that the clamp raises up or lowers down as these things get raised or lowered. And we'll put in just a little bit of added detailing, just so that it feels a little bit more mechanical, I guess. I'm just throwing shit in here at random because this is not the finished product. This is just us putting together the defaults so that we can get something that feels reasonable. Now, for to show that this is cargo, we're going to need some kind of interior detail here that says cargo, you know, that shouts that this is a cargo device. And I think that what we're going to do is some kind of octagonal access hatch. We're not going to be too aggressive about it. But the great thing about these hatches is that you can always bevel. There you are. And there we've got a beveled hatch now. And you can bevel more and more if you want it rounder and rounder. It's not a big deal. That's obviously not the most quad efficient way to do things. And if you're going to animate, that can be a serious issue. We are not, so it's not. It's fine. We don't have to worry about it. What we are going to do is cut across here like so. And then we will just take this with the active element and then scale it down like so. And that will be where we can put our inner door. So something like this. Okay, perfect. And that's good enough as far as cargo goes. We're going to go ahead and bevel this edge, just to give it a little bit of roundness. The problem now is that we have all of these rails that are actually like cutting into us, and they're not properly, there's no indents on our surface in those areas. We got a couple of options as to how we want to deal with them, but by far the easiest one is to simply cut and put here, and then bevel as needed. So that's what we're going to do. I'm sure all of you have heard the term bevel more than enough by now. That one's not going to need beveling. It is pre-beveled. Oh, There we are. But these two are going to need beveling. So let's go ahead and select them. And I'm selecting the whole row, not just the top piece. Hit bevel and then extend them until they are wider than the mounting brackets, like that. And now that we have those, what we can do is we can either cut down or extrude out. It's a little bit easier for us to extrude out in this position, so we're going to grab the tops of each of these and just extrude them like so. And then grab the backs of each of these new tops and extrude them out and back and down. Like so. That way it'll look like at least there's some kind of docking going on there. And that's a little bit easier than cutting out those docking shapes into the side of our crate. Of course, once this crate comes up, you can see there's no edges here. So we're going to want to cut in as well. But that's okay, because these won't be quite as visible. It's not going to be obvious that this is half-assed. Okay, it probably will be obvious, but it won't be as obvious. Either way, because we're just throwing stuff together on the quick, this should be fine. We're not too worried about it. Let's go ahead and get ourselves a UV map and punch in some materials nice and quick, just for the case of prototyping here. Got hull, we got heavy hull, and we got glass. Our glass is going to be here, as you might expect. We're going to want to have the glass minimized, not very much glass, but we may put in another just element of it to keep it vaguely fresh and interesting looking, because we're not using textures yet, and so the materials differences are the only differences we get. Either way, we're going to grab some of this stuff here, and that should do for heavy hull, like so. Now you can see that these are barely visible. I'm tempted to make them glass. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and make these glass. There we are. Now they're a little bit more visible. Alright, so that will be how our heavy cargo unit looks. And in the game, this thing will go, as you approach, and it'll just... But we also want to have a unit that is much smaller and stacks up in here. So we'll call this large cargo, and then we'll move it away. Delete this old crappy one. And now we're going to have small cargo. Small cargo is basically the same thing, but at a much smaller scale. I really should save a quartered cube so that I don't have to keep cutting it, but I guess it's not that big a deal. Mirror X, Y, Z clipping. Now this is obviously going to be a much smaller unit like this, but you can see that we're not on center for actually mounting into this system. We could move this, but I think it makes more sense to move this just so that we can do our modeling. So grab 1.25, is that it? No, grab Y.25, there it is. And that way we can still use the 0 point while we're modeling here. There we are. Drag this into place like so. And that's going to be the basis for our cargo shape for all of our other kinds of cargo elements. Now what the idea here is, these will slide up when you want to access them. So rather than having the access unit on the top like you might expect, I'm going to put it on the side. And we'll go ahead and make it something like this, and then we'll extrude out. And then we'll shrink and we'll extrude in. And I can always change this and make it look different later on. But for now, that's going to be fine. Up here on top, we're going to want to put some kind of decoration. So we'll go ahead and extrude ourselves some decoration. We're going to need to unclip for a minute here. There we go. And move it. There we are. So this can be turned into any kind of decoration we want. So we'll just go ahead and extrude it down or up. We're not going to need that bottom plane, so we'll get rid of it. Drop this down. And as you might expect, I'm going to be beveling. If I bevel everything, you can see how it turns into a kind of light switch looking thing. So let's do a duplication here, move this over there. This one will be our light switch looking thing. Not a light switch, sorry, our light thing. And it just looks like a, a light. We can make this look more like a light by extruding these edges here and then scaling up on everything but the z-axis. And that gives us a sort of, nice look. We may end up not having that be mirrored across so many times because that is pretty awful. So what we can do is we can just delete one of the edges, one of the sides here, like so, and then move it into the middle. Nope. There you are. Now we've got a little bit of an indicator light over here near the middle. We're going to want it out near the edge rather than in the middle. And this guy here, we're going to be blending in a different way, or beveling in a different way. So if I bevel like this, it gives us a more of a rounded tube. Excuse me, a rounded tube instead of a light. So very basic sort of stuff we're doing here, but let's go ahead and turn this into some kind of, maybe, I don't know, a button. So we can do that by simply extruding in a bunch and then taking this and extruding down and then moving this whole thing up, maybe? That's fine. I don't know what it is, but it's okay. We don't need to know what it is. It's just decals for greebling purposes at the moment. Later on, we'll have these things. We'll think through exactly what's going on if the game needs us to. If the game ever requires the kind of detail work that that this sort of indicates it would, then we will put it in. But until then, we'll just put in some details for the sake of having details. Just grab all of these and drag them across. Oh, yeah, perfect. And then out. So. Alright, so that's going to be how it looks in general. Let's go ahead and do an unwrap. Definitely Not Lux came in and said evening. Hey, definitely not Lux. Today we're focusing mostly on blendering rather than doing programming because I'm in a super bad mood. So it's best not to program while you're in a super bad mood. And glass, there we are. So let's go ahead and turn this into something that looks vaguely correct. So some glass. The real question is, will the spaceships blend? That is more interesting than you might expect, given that the whole concept of this system is whether or not modular spaceships can do this properly. And we will find out. I'm hoping the answer is yes. So this edge here is a super basic one, but that's fine. I don't think we need anything more complex. We're going to go ahead and select the edges around these. Come on, mouse, what the heck are you doing? Like so, and then call that all heavy hull. This here, I'm going to call that heavy hull as well. All right. There we are. That is going to be the individual storage cell that you would use if you wanted to fill these things up with units like this. There we are. And then when you're in the game, these things would go but there are a couple of small things I'd like to fix now that I'm looking at it. One is that this middle area isn't quite right. I need to have the upper and lower halves separate doors. So to do that, what we're going to do is delete these sets of verts, and then just grab these guys and extrude them over. Boom. Then we will just remove the doubles, and that should allow us to have a different top side and bottom side access unit, which will be a little bit better in terms of allowing people access to these units. We're also going to want to make it clear that this is something that can be opened. It's not clear at the moment. In fact, it's very unclear. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab this and then turn off the clipping and turn it into some kind of handle. It doesn't really matter because this is just prototyping, but I would like it to be clear that this is something that can, at least in theory, be grabbed. So to do that, we're going to cut into a bunch of slices here and then delete all of these middle slices. Well, let's not do that quite yet. Yeah, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's delete all these middle slices. They're gone. There. And then we're going to just grab these, extrude up, and we can merge these. Oh, no, wrong face. There we are. By doing this bridge edge loops. And then we can put in some extra loops here and pull them up. And then, of course, we want to have this feel right. So we're going to shrink this on the x-axis so that it feels more like something that a human could actually grip, especially with fat fingers due to being in a spacesuit. Come on. I can do the same thing here. Oh, are we on individuals? We want a median point. There. This and this we can pull in like so. There we are. And there is our handle. I think it's wrong to make it glass though. Let's go ahead and make it whole flavored. Or even heavy whole flavored. Yeah, there we are. And there we are. And that will go. Let's go ahead and put that back down at 0 and name it. This will be our small cargo. The other one was called our large cargo, right? Large cargo and small cargo. Oh, that's fine. That's great. So with our small cargo, we want to be able to fill units up and then have them animate out. And the same with the large cargo. So now that our cargo is complete, we'll just move that aside and continue work on another part of the ship. So, as I've said a couple of times, it's really important that the ships have a feeling of mobility and movement to them. I need them to feel like they're a little bit more alive than the average spaceship, because that's what this is good at. So I've got a big set of things that I've been thinking about. And one of those things is more organic joints on our structural elements. So right now we've got these structural frames that don't have any joints on them. It might be worth thinking about a structural frame that does have joint integration in it. God damn it. Gmail is the worst interface some days. There we are. So if we take a look at my sketch, I've got a couple of sketches here, and I'm really interested in this system here. These kind of jointed systems might be very interesting in terms of how they flow and how they move. But another thing that's worth considering are the maneuvering pods and such, these things here. These offer a lot of maneuvering jets that are very, very useful for flying the ship in a nice, polite little package. They also have an organic shape to them in the way that they're drawn here. So I figure what I'll do is I'll start with one of these guys, and then I'll move on to the more joint-like systems. So in order to get that guy, we're going to want to just clear the area a little bit, like this. And we're going to need to have a ship engine that points in the same direction as all of these other engines do. So that'll work great as long as there's only one, but these actually have 3 maneuvering jets attached to them, fixed maneuvering jets. So we're going to have a little bit of fun trying to put that together in Unity once I have created it here in Blender. But these don't move on their own. They can be attached to rotors or gimbals or anything else, but they can't move on their own. With that said, they are kind of a distinctive shape. So let's go ahead and try and get that distinctive shape worked out. First part of their distinctive shape is that they're mirrored on the z-axis. Except I'm trying to... The best way to do this is to have them point upwards, I think, so that would be the x-axis. There we are. So we're just going to clear out that side, and then we're going to reshape this into the proper shape. And that's going to be some edge cuts here. And then we'll go here, this goes down, this goes in, this goes back. Kind of like that. Let's go ahead and bevel this. There, that's pretty much the shape I want. So now we need to give it some height. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Boom, we got some height. Now up front, we're going to have the vertical exhaust, which is going to most of the time be a horizontal exhaust, but that's fine. To do that, we're going to want to make this entire thing feel a lot more organic. So we'll bevel in these before we go any further. We're going to bevel the bottom as well, but not as much. And we can also kind of slightly bend the bottom a little bit. We've got a lot of like random crap happening in this file, so we're going to go ahead and go on a hiding spree. Oh, I hid our stuff, didn't I? Hide all that stuff. All right, there we go. So now that we can see what we're doing, what we're going to grab is these guys and just bring them up a little bit. There, like that. That should be fine. And we're going to want to do a similar thing up top here. So, yeah, let's go ahead and... Okay, I think it's just these I want. It's a little hard to see because the light coming in through the sky is actually pretty bad here, the window. I know what I should do. I should adjust my background colors because I've been meaning to do that forever, and I never really got around to it. So here's our user preferences. Themes, and we're currently using a boring theme that doesn't really matter. We could pick one like Flatty Light is often suggested. It's sort of an interesting idea. The background is really, really dark, and the foreground is really, really light, which is the opposite of how I'm used to it. But I think that it YouTubes well, which is why it's so highly recommended. So we're going to go ahead and just use... Oh, I can't even see that. Jesus. Okay, so we can't use an unmodified Flatty Light. That's not going to work. So we're going to need to make this background a lot lighter so that I can see it. Because without that selected, I can't see... Wait, what was it? Why was it so dark before? Why is it bright now when before it was super, super dark? Huh. Alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and just shrink this for a while, and we'll use it until I can't see what's going on anymore. Anyway, this is the situation that we've got at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and bump up some of these elements so that it feels organic. Now, the front panel that we've created is currently not curved at all, but we can fix that. So the idea here is these are going to be side vents. So I need this to be pretty beefy, like it's going to have to be pretty thick. And we'll go ahead and pull this up so that it feels right. And this back element, I guess that's okay the way it is. It's not great. And then we're going to want to extrude and shrink, and then take this bottom element and flatten it, take this top element and flatten it. And then we're going to want to turn this panel into a lot of fun little marks. The problem is that I can't rip it. For some reason, Blender does not let you rip panels. It's really dumb, but that means that you've got to duplicate the panel and then delete it. So how's that for brainy, huh? So now I've got this panel that I've duplicated and deleted, and I can go ahead and cut it up. So once it's been cut up, we can grab we can just grab the whole thing and then do deselect checkers. There we are. And you can see that I have accidentally given it an odd number. So we're going to just undo all of that and then redo it like this. And that should be a little bit better. Once again, we're going to do a deselect checkered. Oh, that's not face select. There we are. Deselect checkered. There we are, much better. So with that happening, we can now extrude back like this, and we will have a grill. See? Nice and clean. And that's going to be our sideways engine. There are lots of things we can do to make that cute. One of the things that we're going to want to do, I think, is select this top level here. And then do a Control-Shift-Alt-S and then tell it to shear it along the correct plane so that we get it lined up there. And the same thing down here. The reason I didn't do this before is because it would have probably screwed up our attempts to make this even if it had had much of a curve to it. But that should be fine the way it is. Now the way that I modeled that, there are no holes, but there may be some problems with the display if you look real close. That's fine. I don't plan to have anybody look real close. Let's go ahead and smooth all of these faces and then turn on the auto smooth limiter. You can see that we have one edge that's not behaving very well, and I think I can fix that just by it really doesn't want to behave. There we are. Fix it like that. That'll do a little bit, but we're also going to want to keep in mind that this is very low res. So we're going to just, I screwed that up. We're going to just bevel it so that it's a little bit higher res and a little bit less aggressive. It's the same thing back here. I guess we'll probably want to do that on every single one of these. There we are. So now what we're going to want to do is put in the upwards facing vent, which I think goes best here. So we'll go ahead and extrude that in, and then once again we're going to flatten all of these edges. Well, later on we will fix that up with our choice of skewing, but for now that's going to work out fine. Now once again we're going to want to duplicate this. I'm going to go ahead and just drag it away for a second so that it's easier to select the underlying face, and then we'll drag it back down. And you can see that this is much wider because it's got across the x-axis. The mirroring has gone across the x-axis. That's probably too wide, so we're going to just go ahead and select these edges and then pull the whole thing in. There we are. And then what we're going to do is cut. And then we'll select everything and then do a checkered deselect with faces. Yoink. Perfect. And then we'll extrude down. Perfect. So the only problem with this is that it is not even across the x-axis. This is an extra wide little beam. So what we can do to fix that is we can select all of these things and the line on the object itself, and just move it in until it feels right to us. So like that. And that should work just fine. Now we could skew this whole thing if we would like. Let's go ahead and try it, see how it looks. It looks like our downwards extrusion wasn't precisely flat, but that's okay. No reason to worry about that. If we grab everything and then Control-Alt-Shift-S, we're not going to be able to do anything because this is not the right axis. So in this case, what we're going to want to do is tell it to go to the 3D cursor like that, and then scale from the 3D cursor but only on the x-axis like that. And you can see that we can get some scaling vents going on here. Now that doesn't look too bad, but it doesn't look quite dense enough for our needs. So what we're going to do is undo basically everything. And we're going to go ahead and do that scaling first rather than second, just because it's going to be such a big part of how this looks. There we are. And now we can extrude with an eye towards how it's going to look. So if we do that, there we are, like that. And then we'll go, I shouldn't have dragged it. Let's try that again. There we are. And then we just do a full select and change it to face mode and deselect checker. There we are. We'll extrude down along the z-axis and only the z-axis. There we are. Select everything and select the mesh's face. There we are. And move it slightly. Perfect. And that's going to be our upwards vent, or our vent that is isolated. We could make it considerably smaller and it would still look fine, but I think it looks good like this. Another thing we're going to want to do is try to make this top area seem a little bit less dumb looking. So that's a technical term, dumb looking. Let's go ahead and see whether or not we can give it any sort of decent shape. That's a little bit better. Not great. This front tip is way too square, so let's blunt that down some. Let's go ahead and blunt it way down. There we are. This rear tip is also way too square. Blunt it down. And once again, we're going to want to do it twice. Here, blunted. So now what we've got is a situation where the sharpness, we've got an automated sharpness thing, and it doesn't really last to this back edge. This back edge isn't properly cutting things. So we can drag the back edge. We could have also marked it sharp, but I think that in that case, dragging it actually produces a better result. We can also drag this out a little bit to try and get us a little bit of a crisper result there. Last thing we want to do is put on some decorations down here on the bottom. So let's go ahead and grab some of these elements, and then we'll just boom, boom. Just that and maybe one more up here should be enough. In the actual game, there may be pipes, ropes attached to it, but I haven't gotten that far. For now, let's go ahead and just assign some materials, half-assedly. Hull, heavy hull, and vent. No, that's hull again. Vent, there we are. And when we go into the object, it's obvious that our vent areas are going to be these guys. So we'll just grab them. And these guys over here. We'll Control plus and then assign them to vents. That's okay. Now our heavy hull is going to have to be these guys down here. And maybe this lower ridge. Yeah, I think that's probably fine. Let's go ahead and do some UV unwrapping, just for the sake of having some UV elements. And then we're going to call this the maneuvering jet pack. We'll actually call this, rather than maneuvering jet, we're going to call it strafe jet pack. Because these are, technically speaking, intended for strafing rather than maneuvering. I know that that doesn't seem, that might not make a whole lot of sense to anyone other than me, but it makes sense to me. So now we have this problem here where this element is not the right size. So what we need to do is just try and massage it into being a little bit more the right size. And we could always like cut and subdivide further, but I'd prefer to avoid that if I can. I'll just make it a little bit better and call it a day there. So if we pop over into Unity, we have to wait for it to load. Check my Twitter. All right. So now that that's loaded in, we can drop the ship parts into the game world here, and you can see our lovely ship parts that we've created all inhabit this world just fine. Moreover, they're very easy for us to add into the world of the ship, you know, with all of its physics, because the way that the physics work is very, very straightforward and simple. Let's go ahead and start to add some of these in, because otherwise, you know, we're not going to have enough stuff. So here is the rack, the shipping rack that we've got, the cargo rack. There are lots of things that we need to add. We can add in a box collider here, but the box collider is actually the wrong size. That's because it's trying to surround the entire mesh, but we need to exclude a small portion from the sides and the back. Now, the reason for that is so that these meshes don't get used as structural elements when you're designing your ship. I mean, if you want to use them as structural elements, you can, but we would like it to default to not doing that. So this is going to be 2, and then this is going to be 4. And that'll be, that might need to be brought down from 4 down to like 3.95 or something similar. We'll have to figure that out as we go. Either way, we're going to want this to have a physics component, which determines the various stats of this object. We're not going to go ahead and turn on any stats yet. We're not going to customize this at all yet, but that'll be fine for now. It is already ready for it to be used in our ships. We could literally drag this into the existing ship and it would just work. But what we don't have at the moment is a set of prefabs for our ship units. They're all in scene only right now. So we're going to go ahead and create that directory, and then we're going to start dropping things in there as we complete them. That's going to be very useful to us for the purposes of having this work out well with saving and loading and stuff. So we've got a couple of things that can fit inside of this object, including our buddy, the heavy cargo unit, the large cargo unit. So we're going to go ahead and set these units up. We'll start with the small one because he happens to be in more or less the right place. We're going to want to give him a box collider as well. Now you can certainly use mesh colliders for this, but that's a little bit expensive for something that no one is going to have to, you know, nobody cares whether or not you hit the exact light on top of it. So we're going to go ahead and leave that be. We're actually going to remove the lights just to prevent it from accidentally hooking into anything else. And we're going to put on some kind of thing that makes this seem good, but I haven't really decided what it is. Maybe lights or something later on. For now, it should work fine. We'll just add in a physics component. And that will be that. We're going to go ahead and drop the compressive strength and the connection strength down rather considerably here, just because it's not intended to support anything other than its own weight. I'll drop this in here, small cargo, then we'll delete it. I'll bring this guy over and put him here. And then this guy is our large cargo. We're going to also do a box collider, and we're also going to cut off that top little bit, and then we're going to put in another physics component. There we go. We're going to go ahead and make this heavy and leave it with a slightly reduced strength. So that should work for our cargo container. You can see that we extend out a little bit far here, but that should never be a problem. If it is, I'll change it later. So there we've got our small cargo and our large cargo and our cargo rack. Let's go ahead and put in some small cargo into our cargo rack, just so that we can get a feel for what this would look like properly set up. So you can see that we are not running on 0.25, we're running on 0.5. So we have to type in 0.25 here if we would like a proper 0.25 offset. But that's not a big deal. And that's what a full cargo rack would look like here in our system. The problem is that none of these cargo racks are at present able to extend. They're not able to properly lift themselves up as you get close. That might have to wait. As long as it's possible for us to do it later, I think I'll be happy. But just so that you're aware, that's what our cargo container looks like when it's full of small cargo tanks. And it fits nicely inside of our ship, as you can see. All right, so we can continue to just make these things correct. One of the elements that I have to question is whether or not I want these beams to be two-sided, mirrored across the x-axis like they are. It might make more sense for these to be single-sided so that they can be any width. So that's what we're going to change right now. This is Simple Brace and Simple Brace 1. Let's delete this one. We're going to take off the x-axis mirroring. It's that simple. Boom. So go back over into Unity, which is there. And there we have a single brace. With that in mind, we're going to want to use a mesh collider. We're going to go ahead and make it convex. The penalty if we're making it concave is really high. So even though in theory there might be situations where you want to duck through this arch, for now we're going to make that impossible. We're also going to go ahead and add in a physics component, which I know that you probably expected. We're going to reduce the mass but increase these strengths considerably, because that's what this is there for. This is a structural element. So this simple brace can now be saved. And this guy here is our frame. We're going to go ahead and put a mesh collider and a physics component on this as well. Now the mesh collider for this isn't technically necessary in that it is fairly box shaped, but I think that I can see a lot of situations where this might end up butting up against something else. And since it has a pretty important collision frame, I'm going to go ahead and make it mesh based. Like the other guy, we're going to go ahead and make this a little bit lighter and a little bit stronger. That should do. Let's go ahead and save that down here. Boom. This is our cockpit. It's got really no particular reason that it's going to be necessary yet, but it's good to have one. This is just a mock-up, so it's not permanent, but we're going to want to use a mesh collider there as well. Now this has a number of details that pull the mesh collider into slightly awkward shapes, but in order to erase those details, I would have to inflate it quite dramatically. So I don't believe that we're going to want to... Well, that's actually considerably simpler, isn't it? No, it's the same. Never mind. That should be fine. It's not like we're going to have 100,000 of these. All right, so now we're also going to need a physics component, like so, but we're also going to need a ship control system. These ship control systems are what control the entire ship, as you might expect. And they're kind of why we would need a cockpit in the first place. So that should do. Let's drop our cockpit into the ship parts. There we are. So now we've gotten almost all of our parts, but this strafe jetpack is going to be an issue. The reason is because it's got 3 engines attached to it. And it shouldn't be too bad because I know how to handle that. But for now, let's go ahead and add in a mesh collider. Like so. And then we're also going to add in a physics component. Like so. We're going to make this a little bit heavier and quite strong because it has to be able to support the thrust of the engines that are inside of it. What we need to do is have these engines point the correct direction and have particle effects and. The easiest way to do that is to go over to our ship and grab ourselves a particle system from the ship itself, which is this guy here. This is just the existing maneuvering jet, so what we're going to do is duplicate it and then drop it into our, what was it called? Strafe Jetpack, there it is. So if we bring this down to 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, we can now move this into whatever position we want it to be moved into. I'm not 100% sure what that long yellow beam is, but you can see that this is pivoting around something that's not part of the system. That's the downside of using this. It's not actually as... it was intended to go on something else, and it is a little bit iffy, but that should be fine. We're not going to be using the visual anyway. So we're going to just drop this in, make it more or less the correct size. So like that. It's a little bit wide, isn't it? There we are. And then we can hide the mesh renderer. And that ought to work just as it is, but we're obviously going to need 3 of them. So let's get this second one here, and we will just flip that like so, and then move it like so. Ooh, that didn't move right, did it? I keep forgetting they're not precisely centered, and that means that all sorts of dumb stuff can happen. And the last one we're going to want to put in the middle, pointing upwards. So drag that into place. Yup. Yup. And then up a little bit, and then hide it. Although, to be honest, that doesn't look too bad when it's not hidden. Still, later on we'll make these a little bit better. So that strafe jet pod now has 3 rockets attached to it that are all pointed the correct way. I'm going to up the strength a little bit more, and then drop that down here. And now if you're wondering if this actually would just work plugged into the ship, well, let's go ahead and grab this strafe pack and drop it into the ship. So here's our ship. And we're going to go ahead and put a strafe pack onto this armor plate. So just drop it there, bring it over. There we are. That looks more or less right. We're going to just move it back so that it seems like it's more correctly aligned, like so. Boom. What we can do now is delete this other rotor and duplicate the first rotor, and then flip it. Myok. And move it over. Myok. Now we just tell the ship to wake up by telling it to requery its contents and then reconnect everything. And there we go. We have it all reconnected and requeried. I thought, well, this rocket is no longer in the ship's list, so that needs to be fixed. But what happened with the yellow lines? They're all linked up. Okay, now I can see them. That was weird. I couldn't see the yellow lines for a second. So now, if we hit play, Phantom Unboxing said some stuff, and I'm sorry I didn't notice until now. He says, what do you think is the easiest 3D modeling program? I like using Sculptris because it is super easy to pick up. Blender makes me sad. Blender is definitely not the easiest to use. I would hesitate to say it's the hardest because I've used some pretty out there modeling systems, but it is certainly not the easiest. And I think it really depends on what you need it for. If you're a fan of Sculptris, then that's probably because the things you're creating are things that Sculptris is good at. Sculptris is not so great at some of the things that you might need to create, like spaceship parts. I'm trying to get this mic to behave. It suddenly started to screw up. Come on, behave. But I would say that for most people, Maya is probably the best choice with some ZBrush if you need to do complicated organic shapes. ZBrush is really good. It's like Sculptris, but with some real muscle behind it. But unfortunately, right now, there is no single best solution. A standard pipeline, for example, is you use ZBrush to get your model up and running, and then you export that into Maya, and then you use another separate program to do the texture work. And then when you put it into Maya, you break it down into multiple different meshes with different LOD, different levels of detail. And then you have to rig it up, and you might rig it up in Maya or something else. It's not unusual for you to go to a third-party solution for animation, whether that's a mocap piece of software or just something that shows animations better than Maya does. But even then, you're probably not done, because you got things like if you need to do facial expressions, that's a different kind of animation that uses it might use shape keys rather than bones and stuff like that. So by the end of the day, a professional might use 5 or 6 different pieces of software, each of which is only good at one thing. So here you can see that the jets are working fine. Spoosh. Zoom. Zoom. Shoof. And then if we want to go down, we can go down. Going well. All right. So that is all working great. So that modeling we did, perfectly fine. It's great. It's useful. Only problem is that it doesn't look like the one of these jets isn't working, and I don't know why. That's really interesting. It's just one specific jet out of the 6. There's only one that doesn't fire. That's really weird. Well, whatever. And then Phantom Unboxing said, I just got back, had to take the dog out, so he missed my answer. That's fine. Modeling is just so much work. For my newest project, I'm going for the clay toy look. Well, then Sculptris is not a bad option. Sculptris is quite good at clay toy sort of things. Obviously, if you have cash to blow, I would recommend getting ZBrush because that's even better at the clay toy stuff. But it also costs like $300. And ZBrush Core isn't worth it. It's totally worthless because you can't export anything other than an obj file. And that's like insultingly dumb. It means you literally can't use ZBrush Core for anything other than just modeling stuff to look pretty while it's in ZBrush, which nobody does. Like, there's nobody in the entire world that has projects that take place 100% inside of ZBrush. That's just not a thing. So I don't know what the hell the ZBrush Core guys were thinking, not letting us export anything other than obj files. Ugh. Phantom Unboxing says that making weapons in clay is weird. Well, the standard approach for that is that you make the weapons out of things that aren't clay, like pipe cleaners or paper towel rolls or similar things. Now, those are hard to model in Sculptris, but those are very easy to model in Blender or Maya. So if you wanted to go for a fun look, you could have weapons that were made out of other materials that aren't clay. That has the advantage of also showing the weapons up as a clear, foreign body, something that is dangerous and not part of the standard surroundings. But I'm not trying to make you do something specific. I'm just letting you know how it's often handled. Phantom Unboxing wishes he was good at Blender. Nobody's good at Blender. Blender is an awful mess. But there are a lot of people who can get Blender to do what they need it to do. I'm getting there. So it takes a lot of effort to get even one little piece of Blender to work the way you want it to work. nobody is good at it, and nobody learns it fast. It's always a nightmare. It's always a struggle. It's just a big pain in the ass. Yep, Phantom Unboxing says that Blender is not user-friendly at all, and he is right. It's not the least user-friendly 3D programming or 3D modeling software I've ever used, but it is real close. To be honest, I would almost prefer to use something like that old Google SketchUp stuff, but it doesn't have all of the functionality you need. It's got a lot of limits, so that's, I mean, Blender's better at many kinds of things, so... I clearly need to make this system a little bit better because it doesn't correct itself. If it's got a lot of lateral velocity, it doesn't try to stop that lateral velocity even after you've finished strafing. So I'm going to have to work on that because that's supposed to be something that doesn't happen. Do I have my notes? I think I still haven't even taken them out of the box. Notepad. God damn it. I don't know where my notepad is. Alright. Well, I'm thinking about stopping here because the heat and the anger have exhausted me. And it has been more than an hour. Oh, just barely. This hasn't been a very long stream, and I apologize for that. But I am trying to not burn out on this and not be too loud and obnoxious when I'm raging about things that aren't related to the project on Twitch. If you have any questions, let me know now, because I'm going to stop in a couple minutes here. Oh, I could put the cockpit in here, because this is where the cockpit should go. We drop a cockpit in. The piloting ring and the spotlight are both things that should be in the cockpit, not the reactor. But we also have to specify them here in the cockpit. The piloting ring. And the strafe ring. Excuse me. And the component. And then we'll want to move this stuff to 0, 0, 0. There we are. Perfect. Of course, the cockpit should go in the spot of the cockpit here, like this. That's better. And it should just plug right in. I shouldn't need to do any sort of complicated chicanery. I do need to remove this ship control system, though. It is not the right thing to have here anymore, because it's supposed to be a reactor. All right, so save that, and then tell the ship to reload its object list and re-guess at its connections, and then we will hit play. Oh, I forgot to set up the, sorry. There's actually a little bit of work that has to go into this because I set it up to have these events. It's all event-driven stuff. And the result is that the ship control system has some events that have to be wired in to the proper rings. So that goes there, that goes there, and then this goes into the adaptive material percent, and then this also goes into the adaptive material percent. There we are, better. Ooh, that's some shaky, shaky vibration we've got going on. Yeah, I'm gonna need to work on that. I still have a lot of confidence that this ring is the right way to go for piloting, but I need to make it so that the ship responds correctly, because right now it is pretty washy. All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed the hour of me modeling spaceships, but given that there's only 2 of you, it's not very probable. Have a good evening. I will see all of you on Sunday or next Wednesday, depending on when you'd prefer to see me. And I'm signing off.